Oh, number 18 is the Archetype Mediation Trainers Training. Now, if anyone wishes to teach some of the Atelier of Power techniques and to actually have some idea how to teach them, they will need to do the Consciousness Designer Trainers Training. Admittedly, there are people who have written down things I've said at a workshop and who have read things I've said teaching a workshop. However, that doesn't really pass on anything important. Why are there explanations for techniques? Well, explanations are clouds so that the sun doesn't burn. Explanations are not the thing itself. So if somebody repeats my explanations, it won't actually do anything. They need to know how to pass on the energy. It's a skill. It can be learned. Now, you've probably had some teachers in your life that somehow you just did things much better near those teachers. And some other teachers where somehow you just didn't really know how to apply what you learned. And people that have been describing NLP as taught in Slovenia and other ex-Yugoslavian countries are still describing after over 20 years that if they learn from me, they don't have a lot of complex words, but they are very effective in their work. And where they've seen trainings done by others, the consistent result is that the person learns a lot of clever words, but is not very experienced in producing results. It is possible, to be present and pass on information, and not be me. Christina Hall does this nicely, for example, who was trained with Richard Bandler for many years. She can pass on a resonance of information. It's a skill she consciously has. A few have this, most do not. A few might have been born with this ability, almost all have not been. It can be taught, I can teach it. If you want to know how, well, it's the Atelier of Power Trainers Training. But if someone has read a book or read some notes of mine or seen a technique and says they can teach it, well, actually they're fooling you, or trying to, because if I have not passed on the resonance that you pass on, 90% at least of the information will not be there to be passed on. So in the trainer's training, you learn to pass on information to the superconscious mind, to the visual mind, to the emotional mind, to the visceral mind, in a harmonious way with consistent information. And if this can be taught somewhere, I don't know where. Well, somebody taught me, that's true, and taught it very well, and this was in 1966. So he's not around to teach you, and if somebody else consciously knows how to do this, I can only say that I've met a huge number of teachers, and very few have this ability. I do know one or two, and they're not teaching this type of workshop, so your choice in anything like workshops is come to the trainer's training and actually learn the real deal, how to be a teacher and permeate information, so that your students are actually knowing. That was number 18, The Archetype Mediators Trainers Training, or the Atelier of Power Trainers Training. The Trainers Training will teach you the Atelier of Power and Archetype Mediation both at the same time.